this point, it's been maybe 3 weeks. I keep filming them. At this point, I have 2 videos filmed that you have not seen yet. And yet here I am filming another, hoping that what I need to make it so that I can actually edit my videos and get them up in a timely manner will arrive tomorrow. So you might see my first quarter wrap-up video, which I have now filmed 3 times. Next, maybe, if we're really lucky, you'll see it on Monday. And you'll see this video a week after that. I'm just trying to keep up with filming, even if I might not be able to actually post the videos. Because this is just a sort of last minute video to film. It's going to be kind of a weird one. I have no makeup on, which feels very weird. Because I just sort of spur of the moment decided to film this, but April is National Poetry Month. If you live in the United States, I don't know if that's an international one or not, but since I personally love poetry, I wanted to talk about some of my favorite books of poetry that I grabbed off my shelf. Some of these I've read recently, some of them I have not, some of them I am currently reading. So it's just gonna be a little bit chaotic. I want to start with the book of poetry that I am reading for this month, and that is This is the Honey it's edited by Gorman Alexander. Oh, hi Mia. Hi baby. You want to say hello to everybody? What if I scratch this side? Oh, you come to this side. Knocking some books over for me, huh? Nice, sweet pea. Alright. Introducing the chaos earlier than I thought we would. And some unexpected mouth sounds. Okay, Mia, you want to lay down? You want to lay down? No, you want to hold hands? You can't just keep licking my hand. I'm trying to film a video. Yeah, I know. So This Is the Honey is an anthology of contemporary Black poets. I am only a little ways in. About 43 pages into the book. This is one that my mom actually sent to me because she enjoyed it so much, and I am thoroughly enjoying it so far. At 43 pages in, I can't say whether I recommend it yet or not. But chances are very good that I will end up highly recommending this one because I have enjoyed every poem so far. years ago, my dog is knocking every pillow off my bed to show her disdain for me still being awake at this point. She's very upset with me. So the next thing that I wanted to share, this is my all-time favorite poem. Oh, my husband's coming up the stairs now. Hi. We're filming up here. Did you want the dog? Bye. So I do have an English degree. I studied mostly British literature. My absolute favorite era was the Romantic era. My favorite poet when I was in college was John Keats. And my favorite poem at that point was Odon Melancholy, which I am going to read for you because it is more than 100 years old, so theoretically should fall outside of copyright laws. And let's see if YouTube gets mad at me or not. Odon Melancholy. No, no, go not to Lethe, neither twist wolfsbane tight-rooted for its poisonous wine, nor suffer thy pale forehead to be kissed by nightshade, ruby grape, or proserpine. Make not your rosary of yew berries, nor let the beetle nor the death moth be your mournful Psyche, nor the downy owl a partner in your sorrow's mysteries. For shade to shade will come too drowsily, and drown the wakeful anguish of the soul. But when the melancholy fit shall fall, sudden like heaven from a weeping cloud, that fosters the droop-headed flowers all, and hides the green hill in an April shroud, then glut thy sorrow on a morning rose, or on the rainbow of the salt sand waves, or on the wealth of globed peonies, or if thy mistress some rich anger shows, imprison her soft hand and let her rave, and feed deep, deep upon her peerless eyes. She dwells with beauty, beauty that must die, and joy, whose hand is ever at his lips, bidding adieu, and aching pleasure nigh, turn to poison while the bee-mouth sips, aye, in the very temple of delight, veld melancholy actually what reinvigorated my love of poetry, which had lain somewhat dormant since I graduated from college. So, the reason that this is titled Homie is that he didn't want a lot of white people using the N-word, which is what he would have titled it. And I think that it makes a wonderful contrast to the poet, Dean Ada. I've read a couple of Dean Ada's books. The one that I have is Black Flamingo, but the collection of poetry that I read was I Ain't Nobody's N-word. And he has a wonderful poem about why you can't reclaim that word. And I think it's just a delightful contrast to Homie. Obviously, I can't speak to whether the N-word is reclaimable or not. But as a queer person who delights in using the word queer, but who has had other words used derogatorily against me and that I will not use, I find it an absolutely compelling argument, and I love seeing it play out in the form of poetry, because I think that it's exactly the right space to explore what words mean to us as individuals and to us as a collective. And I know I said I was going to go through them in alphabetical order, but since I've pulled out the Black Flamingo by Dean Ada, this is also a work by a Black queer poet. Dean Ada is, I believe, British rather than American, and the Black Flamingo is a coming-of-age story told in verse. And I absolutely loved it. So this is a lightly fictionalized version of Dean Ada's life, I think. It's been a few years now since I read it, so I don't want to speak out of turn. I would say that if you're someone who doesn't read a lot of poetry, something like this is actually a great place to start, because like the Odyssey or the Iliad, it is telling, or, there's a lot of classical versions, Beowulf, Paradise Lost. It's telling one coherent story, and that makes it easy to keep going, but it is told in verse, which is obviously something that modern readers are less familiar with, because we're used to our stories being written down in novel form, not being something that we have to memorize in order to pass on. So, the Black Flamingo, if you think you don't like poetry, try this one. I'm just going in random order now. The next one that I want to talk about is Roscoe and the Book of Delights. Technically, this is not a book of poetry. Roscoe is a poet. This is another one that I think my friend Hayun sent me. The Book of Delights is a collection of, I use the word essays. Well, that car was just rude. I because some of them are like a paragraph long. Most of them are just a couple pages long. But essentially what he's doing is writing about something that delighted him each day. So he starts with his birthday and he goes for a year. And it was truly delightful. So I've read the Book of Delights, and then he also has a book that has joy in the title, the name of which is completely escaping me. And then he has books of poetry as well. And I have not actually picked up one of his books of legit poetry yet, but I very, very much want to. So Ross Gay is on my list of poets to read more of. I swear not every poet that I'm going to mention is a black man, but here's another one. And Ross Gay is as well. So Above Ground by Clint Smith. This is another book of poetry that my mom sent me after, I think she heard about it on a late night talk show. I don't remember who, probably Jon Stewart. So she got the book and read it and then sent it to me. And Above Ground is a truly delightful collection of essays about being a black man in America, but also about being a parent. And despite the fact that I am neither of those, I found it very relatable because it so beautifully captures what it is to be human. And I loved this book. It made me cry when I read it, but they were like happy tears of joyful childhood, if that makes any sense. It was absolutely beautiful. I highly, 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 highly recommend this book. So in contrast to that, I have Dothead by Ahmed Majmudar. I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is another book that was my mom's, and I borrowed it and then just refused to give it back. My mom's doing that retiree RV life thing right now, so she doesn't have the space for a lot of books. I'll just hold on to this one until she has room again. At which point I'm hoping she'll have forgotten that this book originally belonged to her. Dothead by Ahmed Majmudar is a collection of poems about being, he is Indian American, he is Hindu, and it is about that intersection of identities. So we have poems like TSA, Ode to a Drone, Immigration and Naturalization, The Enduring Appeal of the Western Canon, To the Hyphenated Poets. It's just, it was a beautiful collection expressing Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, John Keats is the only white person in my list here. That was not on purpose. It's just what I didn't look for. For example, Rose Quartz by Sasha Tuxablu Lapointe. She is a poet local to me, but she is part of the Coast Salish Native American. Coast Salish is not just one tribe, it's a series, or it's a collection of the indigenous groups that are kind of where I currently live. So like Seattle, Tacoma, Puyallup, North Kitsap, Kitsap area. So she is expressing a viewpoint that even though we grew up in the same place, she is only a little bit older than me, so like roughly at the same time too, we still had radically different experiences in life. And I love that. So I really enjoyed these poems. They're a beautiful expression of indigenous experience for a coastal Native American group. And coastal Indians are radically different than Plains Indians in terms of culture and experiences. So she points out in this book that it is a mistake to lump them together, and she does that beautifully in the poem Pony. She also has poems about Twin Peaks. There's a lot of Twin Peaks references in here. So if you are old enough to remember Twin Peaks, I was actually too young when it was coming out to be allowed to watch it. But I have the first 2 seasons on DVD because when I found it as a teenager, I loved that show. It's so weird, and it's so rooted in the Pacific Northwest. And she captures that wonderfully with her poems about the White Lodge and the Black Lodge. And again, that is what I love about poetry, that it can be a viewpoint that I can't access on my own, but which is so adjacent to my own lived experience. Okay, so some of the ones that these are older poetry collections, but I've read them fairly recently. We have The Black Unicorn by Audre Lorde and Cotton Candy on a Rainy Day by Nikki Giovanni. These are both black female American poets who were instrumental in the feminist movements. And that is why I picked up both of these. Audre Lorde, I am of course a huge fan of Sister Outsider, and I do completely agree with her essay, Poetry is Not a Privilege. That might not be the exact title, but it's something along those lines. And reading her essays, which I've been reading since I was in college, made me want to finally actually pick up her poetry, and so I picked The Black Unicorn just because it was a good title, basically. I didn't have a reason to choose this one over any of her other collections. And I just read it last month, and I really liked it. Nikki Giovanni is also one who was publishing in like the 70s and 80s-ish, I think. These are things that I probably could have double-checked before I started talking, but of course I did not, because collection of poetry. No. But if you are not big on poetry, or if you're looking for poetry that is appropriate for a younger audience, I would highly recommend Nikita Gill. I think she does an amazing job of taking fairy tales, retuning them as poetry, and making them accessible for like a middle grade or young adult audience who may or may not want to do the kind of close reading that some of these other recommendations would require to really get the most that you can out of the poems. These are like much more accessible and also very fun. They're like mostly fairy tale retellings. Like somewhere across the universe, this intergalactic fairy tale is being told. She has one called Once Upon a Time. I think there was like, the miller's daughter, half of Rumpelstiltskin seeks redemption, why Tinkerbell quit anger management, Cinderella's mother sends her a message from heaven, boy lost, Wendy the Red Wolf, fairy godmother, two misunderstood step-sisters. You get the point. I am getting so tired that I don't think I can keep reading these in a coherent way. So, I am going to stop for now. I still have so long to go before the race starts. Yeah. It's okay. I can manage. I can do it. I can stay awake. I hope that you all sleep well and that this has been a soothing video for you. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, hit the subscribe button. If you have made it this far and want to leave me a comment, tell me about your favorite poet or poem. If you don't have one, I hope that this has inspired you to spend more time with poetry. Have a good night, y'all. Stay safe out there.